are back in the Parliament Chamber, downtown Castries, for session of the 12th Parliament. And earlier today, we saw the swearing in of the lower house, the members of Parliament taking that oath of allegiance or affirmation. And then we also saw the election of the Speaker of the House, Honorable Claudius J. Francis. That House adjourned just for a few moments, and then we saw the convening of the Senate, and there we saw the turn of Honorable Stanley Felix as President of the Senate, and the senators, 5 on the government side, 2 independents, and 3 opposition senators taking the oath of allegiance or affirmation. Both houses are now sitting jointly to receive a message from the Deputy to the Governor General, and we are soon to see the arrival of His Excellency Errol Charles to deliver that message. Prime Minister Honorable Philip J. Pierre is seated. Beside him is the Deputy Prime Minister Honorable Dr. Ernest Hilaire. COVID-19, as we've said earlier today, preventing the customary numbers in the chamber by way of, invited guests. But we do have the large screens on the outside, tents erected as well, so that members of the public can be comfortable for them to be part of this historic occasion. I am alongside Primus Hutchinson and Winston Springer. The doors to the chamber are now fully opened, and that can mean we're about to see the drum roll, as from our vantage point we can see both the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House,
the arrival of the Deputy to the Governor General in the person of Mr. Errol Charles, flanked on either side by the Speaker of the House, Claudius Francis, and the President of the Senate, Stanley Felix. Notably absent here today is the Minister of Education in the person of Mr. Sean, or the Honorable Sean Edward, and also absent former Prime Minister and nominated, I think, to be Leader of the Opposition, Alan Chesney. We will now hear a message, plans and policies for the Philip J. Pierre administration, delivered by the Deputy to the Governor in the person of Errol Charles. What's that?
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, I am filled with the sense of pride and hope that our country continues to show maturity, having completed a peaceful period of general elections and change in government, demonstrated to the world our respect for democratic will of the people. Now that the general elections are over, it is time to put political differences aside and commence the process of building our country together. After all, St. Lucia is one physical space that we can jointly claim to be ours. Let us protect it and nurture it for ourselves and future generations. Members of the St. Lucia Senate and elected members of the House of Assembly, my government prioritizes for this new session of Parliament are meet structures in place to put structures in place and to secure the necessary resources, human, financial, physical, to allow the real work of transforming St. Lucia by the start of the next Parliament in 2022. There are, however, some initiatives that just cannot wait and need to be attended to immediately. St. Jude Hospital remains a vexing issue for the people of the South and the wider St. Lucian society. For this reason, St. Jude Hospital will be a high priority of my government, together with providing early relief to those who have suffered disproportionately during this COVID-19 pandemic, and significantly in the country's spread of COVID-19 virus. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, I want to reassure St. Lucian public that my government will continue ongoing projects which are viable. However, projects like the Hugh International Airport Rehabilitation Program will be subjected to reassessment, scope, cost, and viability to avoid unnecessary financial burdens on the state. In trying to secure some fiscal space, my government will commence the process of debt restructuring with the assistance of institutions like the Caribbean Development Bank and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, so that some assistance can be provided to those in need of financial support as a result of the negative economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, we will review agreements signed in the last term to ensure that provisions are in the best interests of the people and laws of St. Lucia. This includes the DSH agreement. To the young people looking for new opportunities, I want to tell you that my government's commitment to the youth economy remains unconditional and will be securing the necessary funding and other resources to getting started within this session of Parliament. There has already been encouraging interest and support from international agencies wishing to assist my government in getting the youth economy off the ground. I am pleased to share that young budding entrepreneurs can look forward to a new and exciting future in the world of business. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the main legislative agenda of my government will be deferred to the session of Parliament. In the spirit of change, my government intends to uphold the Constitution of St. Lucia in both words and deeds. And so, out of respect for the people and the Constitution of St. Lucia, which seeks to provide order and good governance in the management of our country's affairs, the intended structures of Parliament will be observed. Provision has therefore been made to ensure that the position of a Deputy Speaker for the House of Assembly is occupied. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government, in recognition of the widespread, unprecedented reports of alleged corruption during the term of the last administration, will appoint a special prosecutor to investigate allegations of corruption in government. This appointment is expected to be completed soon. My government will strengthen the Integrity Commission to return our country to a system that respects our democratic norms and the rights of the people. My government will reactivate the bipartisan parliamentary committee to review Justice Susie Doven's Constitution report and the parliamentary recommendations with a view to adopting final recommendations for implementation. Strengthen the Integrity Commission so that it can undertake the more meaningful action against public officials and the politicians who engage in acts of corruption. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, in providing early financial relief to families, the Ministry of Finance has already commenced the process of assessment and payment of facility fees in time for the reopening of schools in September. In the later part of the financial year 2021-2022, my government will be keeping its promise by paying CXC examination fees, sitting, mathematics, and English. This is my government's early signal of the long-term commitment to making education free. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, as I alluded to earlier, many without work during this COVID-19 pandemic and will require urgent income support to maintain their dignity as providers for themselves and their families. My government will very soon come to the assistance of those individuals. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, if I may return to the vexing issue of St. Jude Hospital, residents of the South have suffered for too long from the substandard healthcare facility of St. Jude Hospital. The people of the South deserve better and will get better. My government will therefore immediately commission a task force to assess the state of affairs of the St. Jude Hospital project. This task force is also expected to make recommendations as to the best option available, given the various structures on the construction site, in securing the early satisfactory completion and commission of the hospital. Too much time and money have been wasted on this project. I wish to re-emphasize my government's commitment to end the wastage and the pain and distress of the people of the South by having St. Jude Hospital completed in the shortest possible time. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, immediate attention will also be given to improving the respiratory unit at Victoria Hospital as part of my government's improvements to the country's COVID-19 physical infrastructure. These improvements should go a long way in allaying the fears and lessening the resistance of to COVID testing because of the unacceptable conditions at the respiratory unit. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, given the urgent need to return to some level of normalcy in the face of our COVID-19 challenges, my government's health agenda remains of paramount importance. To enable the effective management of the current COVID-19 challenges, my government will make a structural change to the COVID-19 Command Center to allow it to be headed by a health expert instead of a government minister. My government's main strategy in the battle against COVID-19 is to increase vaccine intake to avoid our health system becoming overwhelmed by high levels of infected people requiring hospitalization. My government, together with health practitioners and officials, will formulate plans to ramp up efforts to encourage an increase in the number of vaccines. We have already received thousands of Pfizer vaccines from the United States through CARPHA to complement those efforts. My government remains concerned about the many businesses affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and will establish a business recovery unit within the Ministry of Commerce to lend support through a series of fiscal and non-fiscal measures to those businesses in the process of recovery. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, in spite of challenges of COVID-19, tourism will now remain St. Lucia's main economic driver. My government will therefore be faced with the challenge of protecting the health of our citizens and the livelihoods dependent on the sector. In addressing this challenge, the recovery and growth of the tourism sector will be supported while ensuring that the health of our citizens is not placed at unnecessary risk. I am pleased to report that my government has secured an increase in airlift to St. Lucia with the return of scheduled Virgin Atlantic flights from the UK in December 2021. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, as relates to issues of crime, my government remains concerned about the high incidence of crime, especially gruesome ones, an indication of a very angry and frustrated society. We must become more intolerant of infractions of the law at all levels. And our leaders must be good examples to the rest of society. We must, as a society, find more civil ways of resolving conflict and disagreements. Those overseeing the observance of our laws must do so with impartiality and without fear of intimidation. You will have noticed that in my Prime Minister's configuration of ministries, the absence of a minister for national security. Given the highly important role of the police, the Prime Minister's office will be the oversight authority for police. My government's intention is to provide greater operational independence to our police service and the police, Commissioner of Police. The police should be allowed to do their work without being encumbered by political decision politicians. In addition to providing the police with the necessary resources to be effective in their work, my government will address the underlying social structures which give rise to crime and deviant behavior. My government will protect our heritage and patrimony and what defines us with uniqueness as a people and nation, and therefore every effort will be made to protect our patrimony for all generations. To this end, we must develop the institutions that have been designed to protect our heritage and patrimony. My government has already begun a process of reinstating the annual subvention to the St. Lucia National Trust. Public access to our beaches at Queen Chain will also be preserved for the benefit and enjoyment of the people of St. Lucia and visitors. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, my government seeks a new path for St. Lucia, a path where all St. Lucians have a sense of ownership in development of their beloved country. I am of the view that ownership can only come from participation, not exclusion. We all have a part to play in the development of our country, regardless of our stations in life. No nation can be at peace with itself if only a few have access to work, food, clothing, and affordable quality health care. For these reasons, we must keep fighting for the disadvantaged and vulnerable in our society, so that together we can find a place in the soul of our nation. Let us make the 26th of July 2021 the start of a new beginning, where the St. Lucian consciousness of fairness, inclusion, and empathy stays alive and becomes a model for other countries seeking peace and happiness. Mr. President, in closing, I want to thank His Excellency Sir Neville Snack on behalf of the government and people of St. Lucia for having served as our Governor General. I personally wish him the best of health during his retirement. I thank you.
All right.
The Governor General or Deputy to the Governor General, followed by the Speaker and the President of the Senate, about to leave the chamber. Well,
And we've
Lisa?
seen, yes, we've seen at the end of a very historic day here for St. Lucia. And as you indicated, Winston, the Deputy to the Governor General very clearly articulated the plans for the government of St. Lucia moving forward. And very high on that list is being able to provide relief to the many St. Lucians affected by COVID-19. We're not just speaking affected by the disease itself, so are at the respiratory hospital. The Deputy to the Governor General indicated that there is a further assistance on the way by way of trying to make conditions there more comfortable for patients as well as for staff, because we do understand that the medical practitioners there are working under very, very stressful conditions. Also, we did hear the Deputy to the Governor General indicate that the Ministry of Finance is currently doing assessments for the payment of facility fees, and we do have school which is scheduled to open for September 6, 2021. That had been a campaign promise by the Honorable Prime Minister, and it is a promise that is being kept as indicated by the Deputy to the Governor General. Also, that the government will be paying CXC fees for students who are sitting the math and English exams coming there for 2021-2022. And all of this, gentlemen, as Ms. Errol also indicated, is really a step by the Governor of St. Lucia signaling that education is going to be free to all St. Lucians. So a step there towards being able to make that happen. We'll also be seeing a task force. It's scheduled to be established in order for the St. Jude Hospital Rehabilitation Project. That task force is going to do an assessment and make some recommendations for the completion of the hospital. Primus?
Merci, Lucia. Le gouverneur général parlait sur ce plan que le gouvernement a mis en place pour l'année qui va venir. Ce qui est plus haut parmi ces plans, c'est l'hôpital Saint-Jude. C'est un qui le gouvernement a gardé bien sûr pour garder qui plus vite qui a mis ça en place pour soulagement pour cette situation Saint-Jude plusieurs années. Aussi pour ces gens qui ont souffert de maladie corona, particulièrement l'hôpital Victoria, pour mettre à faire en place pour la qualité d'assistance qui est nécessaire pour aider ces gens-là, ces docteurs, équipements. Le Premier ministre a déjà parlé concernant ça, le ministre de la Santé a déjà parlé de ça. Alors ça c'est un qui a adressé plus vite possible. Parmi ces projets qu'on a regardé qui sont importants, ça qui n'est pas important, il y en a dans ces pour bien garder un projet redéveloppement aéroport Hiwanora. Le gouverneur général a dit qu'il va mettre un comité en place pour faire ça à ce projet là pour garder qui capter pèse économique sanitaire sur cette Lucia et garder comment ça améliorer et soulager la situation là. Alors il y a un certain changement à manière projet ça là aller. Alors le projet qui est très important pour le gouvernement c'est aider cela, mettre en économie en place pour ça aider les jeunesses et pouvoir aider les jeunesses qualité développement, qualité assistance que les jeunesses brisées dans le pays là où ça va venir les jeunesses qui pas travailler, les jeunesses qui ont différents problèmes en pays là et que le gouvernement a gardé pour mettre un projet en place particulièrement pour en diverses façons qui est nécessaire. Aussi affaire parlement là j'ai apprêté le speaker qui partait en place pour filtre là ils mettent ça en place pour garder ces institutions parlementaires chaque changement à manière pour la façon qui est plus égale. Il aussi garder pour by Integrity Commission, Constitution du Parlement, tout ça c'est bagaille qui est très important que le gouvernement a mis en place le plus vite que possible. Aussi, ça qui est important, encore plus important encore, c'est l'assistance pour les côté gouvernement que j'ai décidé pour payer ça nous qui assister parents en paiement pour les étudiants et aussi pour assister les étudiants qui assistent écrit l'examination mathématiques et anglais pour le gouvernement qui paye assistance au paiement en ligne comme ça. Comme dit l'hôpital Saint-Georges, qui est très important pour assistance assistance pour les gens qui besoin support en affaires maladie corona et qui ont mis cette des commandes là, ils ont mis un monde qui a assez expérience en santé et qui est sans bas pièce ministre gouvernement, c'est un monde qui a expérience en santé qui a une responsabilité pour ça et que police qui a conduite niveau premier ministre là alors ça pas ça fait qui est toute politique à faire opération police à cette ici et côté niveau premier ministre là qui est responsable pour ça alors toutes ces affaires ça là et pour si l'année qui a venu côté premier ministre là et gouvernement neuf là qui mettait ces affaires ça là en place pour bagaille marcher top mais un pays là après ça moi qui vais passer police et Winston.
No legacy is so rich as honesty, says William Shakespeare. Philip G. and the St. Lucia Labour Party campaigned in poetry and are now beginning to govern in prose. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. No longer will our melancholy, educational and political naivety be exploited. The former President of the United States, Harry S. Truman, once said, "The bus here, our own Herb Black says, anything for a buck stops now. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today." It was a campaign of the people, for the people, by the people. We have been where we are now and where we are going. I am Winston Springer. Lisa?
And thank you so much for that very poignant words there. And certainly we are going to the floor at this that we have the Minister for Youth Development and Sports who is positioned there in front of the camera. So are we going to the floor for just a very short interview? Minister for Youth Development and Sports. We will just hear what his thoughts are as he has spent more than a full week and a half in office, and they would have been able to garner an idea as to where he is. Right at this time, I'm being told, okay, so looks like we are finished for this first sitting of the 12th Parliament. I am Melissa Joseph alongside Winston Springer as well as Primus Hutchinson. We want to say thank you very much to our media partners and thank you so much for joining us for this broadcast. See you next time.